Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And today, oh my gosh, I had such a great pre-chat with this person. You know, I really should record those things, right? But we're going to be talking about probably a little sports. You'll find out why. But we are going to be talking about social media and your business, which is my passion. It's what I do for a living. And we're really going to delve into the whys, the hows, the uh-ohs. And so please join me in welcoming Adam Constantine to the program today. Welcome, Adam. How are you?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm great. I'm super excited. Like we just said, for those who are listening, obviously you're listening because it's been dropped. We're starting about 20 minutes later than was scheduled because we were just having a good conversation.
Having such a great pre-chat. But it was more fun stuff. But we'll get to that. So let me tell folks just a little bit about you, and then we will jump into the important part of this discussion. So from a professional basketball player, see, I said sports, to probably the world's tallest social media guru, Adam Constantine has been a creative pioneer for over a decade in various industries. He has consistently created dynamic, unique, inspiring, and humorous digital content that engages audiences, keeping them talking and building successful brands. Serving as a resource to connect a brand's social media with their external audience. This has led to the launch of Ace Creatives, a social media and full-scale production agency. With clients from top global content creators in Fortune 500 companies and a variety of other verticals, his goal for each is to effectively position them in front of their audience to maximize their ROI and brand affinity. He's been on the national speaking circuit for several years, teaching the importance of storytelling in the digital age and hosting workshops on building a dynamic social media presence. He has served as an event MC and social media thought leader. His unique skill set of simultaneously entertaining while educating a crowd is rivaled only by his 6'8" frame. Yeah, I think he is the tallest. Impressive beard growth and his ever-growing collection of shoes. So again, Adam, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, a lot of people have said if I were to tease the company as much as I talk about my height, that would probably be even bigger than we are now. So that is definitely something that I usually bring up.
I know. Yeah, you're more than a foot taller than me, and I'm not short.
It definitely came in handy for the previous day job.
It did. I am sure. Well, we've teased your bio a little bit, but tell us more about how it is that you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. One, I would say ever since I was younger, I've always enjoyed people and connection with people. So having that laughter, having the ability to educate, having the ability to elicit human emotion. So that's really been what I've enjoyed since I was little, right? You know, like I was a very talkative kid. Sometimes it got me in trouble.
Yeah, I was the kid that my report card said talks too much.
Exactly. They probably just recycled yours and gave it to me because it's the exact same marks that were there. And then, I went to high school and college. In addition to that, what I loved doing was playing sports. Growing up, I was a multi-sport athlete. Ninth grade, I played soccer and basketball. And then really, I hit a growth spurt where I grew 7 inches in a year. Then it's like,
and the people buying you clothes were like, oh my God.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, truly, I remember one of my favorite moments of 7th grade there was someone that told me to act my age, not my shoe size.
Oh,
And I was 12 wearing a size 12. And oh man, the victory that I pulled coming back on that comeback,
yep,
oh,
yep.
it was fantastic. Obviously, clearly still had an impact all these years later. But yeah, I was growing all the time, continuing to move into that. We would buy things that had growing room in those, and I would just shoot past
a
those.
month.
Yep, exactly. So, but yes, I really focused in on basketball the last 3 years of high school. I was fortunate enough to get 7 scholarship offers, and I chose Elon University. Elon University is in North Carolina. My either claim to fame or infamy is basically so when Steph Curry was in college, he went to Davidson. We were in the same conference.
Okay.
So we played against them 7 times during my career there. So that's usually how I pinpoint where Elon is relevant on the map. On the wrong side of history when it comes to Steph Curry is basically where we were. But yeah, so we played all through college. And really, college is where my love, not even my love, but like the growth for, I need to have something other than basketball to sustain after the fact. But I played there with a 4-year letter there. I was good enough that my senior year that I was able to continue to play professional basketball.
Nice.
So that was one of those things where, and I mean, I guess you can get put on a team. I guess, Jeff Bezos could pay the Dallas Mavericks $100 billion if he wants and then get on the team. But if he gets on the court, he's going to be exposed. So
and hurt.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh yes. Oh yes. No amount of testosterone, which he is definitely on, is going to save him from that. Right. But like when it comes to sports, there is a certain level of earning that spot. That other corporate jobs, other things just don't have. You do have to be good enough to compete. So being able to make it as a professional is one of those moments that I do have as one of my top achievements. And I did that overseas. So I played in Europe, Middle East, and Asia. So played in 7 different countries over 5 years. So that's Bulgaria, Sweden, Cyprus, Turkey, Germany, Israel, Finland.
I love it.
So I did all of those, all different cultures. Sounds like a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun. It can also be frustrating, but one of the things that you don't realize is you are truly leaving every single person you knew halfway across the world.
And you're a kid. Let's be honest. You were 21 years old when you first.
Exactly. I was 21. I might have just turned 22, if that. And then all of a sudden, I'm on my own in a country that English is not their first language, trying to figure out this job that's one of the most competitive jobs in the world. And I still had this want to connect. I still had this want to be a part of the lives that I had cultivated over my 21 years there. And fortunately, social was around just enough to where that could happen. The way I age myself, as I said, that I graduated college the year before Instagram was invented, right? So like there is that, but because of Facebook, MySpace was kind of petering out at that time. But really, Facebook was huge then, and that was how you connected. So what I did is I started a blog, and in that blog, it was about my journey. So it's called The Pursuit of My Dream. The blog really allowed me to continue that connection. And what I did back then is I literally had a list of 300 names of people that wanted me to post their blog on their story. Post their blog on their wall, right on their Facebook wall. So I would literally write the blog and then I'd go through, and the rest of the day I would just post that and let them know that it was coming out. And what that did is people would react to it.
Mm-hmm.
They would find something funny about it.
Mm-hmm.
They would find something heartfelt about it. They would feel sorrow with
Mm-hmm.
me if it was negative.
Mm-hmm.
But it allowed me to write and tailor my writing
Right.
to what my audience
Mm-hmm.
reacted to, because
Mm-hmm.
I got that instantaneous
Mm-hmm.
feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that, kind of as my career continued. And after those 5 years, that's when, in my head, like every person that goes pro,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to continue to play, have a long, fruitful
Mm-hmm.
career, and then retire at 35,
Mm-hmm.
which was last year for me. Newsflash, that didn't happen.
Didn't happen. Yeah, you'd
Yeah,
stopped
right.
playing. Mm-hmm.
Right, exactly. I tore my quad tendon when
Oh.
I was in Israel. Yeah, and it was a pretty rough road to recover.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Tried to play back in Finland. 3 weeks into preseason
Mm-hmm.
over there, I hurt my knee again,
Mm-hmm.
and I was done.
Yeah, it reaches a point where you're like, nope, the body's just saying we're done. Mm-hmm.
Yep, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So and this kind of goes back to what you and I have had some conversations on. I went from being an athlete, where that was my main identity,
Right.
that was who I was, that was what I had pursued my
Mm-hmm.
whole life,
Mm-hmm.
to I didn't
Right.
I didn't know what.
Mm-hmm. Well, and being an athlete overseas, and I know some, it's a very structured, as to your entire day is scheduled.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it has to be, because you're in a foreign country.
Yep.
You're housed pretty much with the team. You're traveling, you're practicing, all of those things. Even more so than when you were in college. And so yeah, you went from all of that to okie dokie, now what?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm about to come home, and I had a friend that knew that I had been doing social,
Mm-hmm.
right? Had knew that I'd been doing this blog,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a small social media role that they were like, hey, like, if you're interested, you can do this. And I was like, I literally have nothing else.
Right.
So absolutely. So I was able to come back and take that role. That role then turned into a job offer at Elon University, my alma mater.
Nice.
Where I came from, right? So I was able to then be the head of social at Elon University. That was probably the best spot for me,
right?
Because I did the reason why I tell all that story is, my whole life, and then specifically my pro basketball career, really honed my skills for understanding that you have to write for your audience in order to be successful in this social media world. And it has to be what they want. You can write what you want, but if they don't care, no one's going to read it, and it's not going to move forward. So you have to be able to figure that part out with that. So I was able to take that skill. And turn that into a career. Now, what I didn't have was the academic rigor of punctuation, proper communication, all the tenses. So that was really, really rough. But being back in a higher ed environment allowed me to sharpen those skills. Get back there. I was able to and I made sure. So it's actually pretty funny. I also use this story to talk about the power of networking. So at Elon, I had a Professor Janet Anderson, who I changed my major 3 times. By the time I had switched to the communications major I was a sophomore in classes with freshmen. And that's because I was behind. Right.
You had to catch up.
I already knew, it didn't matter what they did. None of them were athletes like me, so it was fine. These were some of the most try-hard freshmen I have ever met in my life. I mean, they had resume. They were stressed because she was saying you could only have 1 page for your resume,
Mm-hmm.
and they were freaking out. I'm like,
They're
how
like,
do you
but I've
have
done
this
it,
much?
and mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Yes, exactly. And I'm like, how have y'all done that much already?
mm-hmm.
And Professor Anderson, she was like, well, what are you going to do, Adam? And I was like, I play basketball. I'm too
Yeah.
busy. She was like,
Mm-hmm,
yeah, right. She was like, no, you're not.
mm-hmm,
And she eventually like forced me to do a bunch
mm-hmm,
of stuff. So in
mm-hmm.
college,
Right.
I ended up writing for the school paper.
Mm-hmm.
I started doing a movie review podcast.
Oh, I love
I
it.
worked
Mm-hmm,
for, I
mm-hmm,
was the president of the Student
mm-hmm,
Athlete Association.
mm-hmm,
I started my own little video marketing
mm-hmm.
company. I worked with the PR student run company on campus. So I started doing all of these
Right. Oh
things.
my gosh, what a
Um,
great mentor. Mm-hmm,
yes, no,
mm-hmm,
she was fantastic in that to the point where the reason when that job was open,
mm-hmm.
she was married to the VP of
Ah,
Communications at the
you never
time,
know who
Dan
people
Anderson.
know. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Right. So she told him to reach out to me.
mm-hmm,
I reached out.
mm-hmm,
I applied for the
mm-hmm.
role. I got it, but it wasn't until later that he was like, yeah, he said, yeah, it's a good thing. He was like, don't worry, you got it under your own merit.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's a good thing we did know you because your cover letter was one of the worst we have ever seen
And
when
this
it
was
comes to
before
grammar and
Grammarly and
punctuation.
all of those things. Yep.
Oh
Mm-hmm,
yes, oh
mm-hmm,
yes. So it was awful.
mm-hmm,
So I needed the help.
mm-hmm,
So anything that I wrote, always I made
mm-hmm,
sure to have several people
mm-hmm,
proofread it just to
mm-hmm.
make sure that I was good. And as a
Right.
result,
Mm-hmm,
I was able to learn what was
mm-hmm,
needed
mm-hmm,
from that. So being able to be back at Elon and being
mm-hmm,
able to be in this safe space for me
mm-hmm.
to work on what I was weak,
Wow.
but
Mm-hmm,
really grow
mm-hmm,
the university and what they were
mm-hmm,
weak in as well, was a great place for me to
mm-hmm,
start
mm-hmm,
my corporate journey, moving from playing
mm-hmm,
into the real world.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So once I did that at Elon for a while, I moved around and moved along. So I went from Elon to a mortgage company,
Mm-hmm.
and I was their head of social. I went from that mortgage company to a bigger agency. And at
Mm-hmm.
this time, I was like, okay, I think I want to do my own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Then after that agency, I started Ace.
Mm-hmm.
Ace was born out of the pandemic. So, in 2020, me and one of the guys that I A went to school with, B
Mm-hmm.
worked with at Elon,
Mm-hmm.
and then C brought him to the agency
Mm-hmm.
with me. Him and I jumped in full time
Mm-hmm.
into Ace Creatives,
Mm-hmm.
and that was September 2020. So about
You're
four and a
coming up
half
on an
years ago.
anniversary. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
know. And the big, I almost
Mm-hmm.
said 5-0. Nope, not
Mm-hmm.
that long, but the big five
Mm-hmm.
is coming
Mm-hmm.
up. So I'm really
Mm-hmm.
excited about where we're
Mm-hmm.
moving and
Mm-hmm.
how we've been able to get to Ace now.
I love it. Yeah, and I want to talk about some of the stuff that you learned along the way that is so important. I mean, like the biggest is that you write for your audience. That is the
Mhm.
biggest thing that I see people doing wrong is, well, I want you to know X about my
Yes.
company. And sometimes that's right, but most of the time it's wrong. And we even see it not just on social. I mean, like I'll see it on commercials and things.
Mhm.
And and then if you're interested, then you have to figure out, okay, what it is. But most of the time we go on to the next thing, right? And so figuring out what your audience wants to hear, and I have a marketing background, and so we were always taught, find somebody's pain and solve it. And I don't like that. I just don't like that saying. I like to say, what is someone's pleasure and how can we help them with that? Because it's the same
Mhm.
concept, right? You want to solve whatever that problem was. You want them to make money, get clients, do whatever their goal is. But how can you do that? And it's not by shoving your message down their throat. It's giving them what they want to hear.
And it's funny because both of those sayings start right here, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Find someone's pain
Mm-hmm.
and solve that,
Mm-hmm.
or find someone's pleasure
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
help to continue that.
Right.
However, the further you go, find someone's pain can turn into create more pain for someone and
Right.
then make them
Mm-hmm.
pay you to solve
Yeah.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happens. That's how like gum and like breath mints and all that stuff was started because halitosis was
and
brought out there. Like,
and the date is mortified, and all of those things,
yes,
and you're
and that wasn't a thing beforehand, right? Whereas when it comes to pleasure, it's like, okay, how can we continue to create that? Now, obviously, in both extremes, there are ways that can be used against, but when you have that inherently negative root, it can turn into you creating more chaos to capitalize on that. And social,
and they focus on it, and we don't want to focus on the negative. I want to focus on what's positive.
And it's funny, that's actually like a pretty big epidemic in social, especially in women's skincare. There's a lot of doctors that are like, guys, you all are stripping your face of any oil or anything.
No wonder you have whatever.
Right. So it's that self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like you strip the bad and the good bacteria. So of course then the bad bacteria, you have to keep doing that and using it. And then when people are coming in and saying, hey, well, you need to stop doing that because of X, Y, and Z. Oh, and then you find a way to be better. So yeah, like understanding the power of your audience is crucial as that number one anchor for having any success on social, but really in communication today. I mean, any at the core of any person that's going to tell you how to do this for people, how to do that, it is understanding that audience from a very, very, like unique spot.
Right. Well, and of course, the first part of that is understanding who your audience is. I'm sure you hear this all the time. You go and you meet with a client and you say, who is your target audience? And they look at you and they smile and they say, everyone. And you're like,
everybody.
No, everybody's going to buy from us. I cannot think of any product. And I keep, I use this example a lot. And so I keep trying to think of this. I can't think of any product that anybody would buy, even if it's just, in the United States, but you think of like McDonald's. Well, no, not everybody likes McDonald's. Not everybody likes Walmart. Not everybody likes Starbucks. I mean, all of these things. And so you have to figure out who it is that you're trying to reach. So how do you help clients get to that point?
Yeah, absolutely. It is funny. That is the exact conversation that I have, right? And I say,
they want to sell to everybody.
Yes, exactly. I usually say, hey, look, if everybody is your audience, then you have no audience,
right?
Like that's just truly what it is. The way that we then turn that conversation to finding it is I say, okay, who thinks they're your audience? So like who responds most to you, right? Who are the ones that want to respond to you? Now, that doesn't mean that's who you want your new audience to be, and that's fine. But like, let's look at them. Let's see what they like. And then let's see how that matches up to the other audience that you want.
Right.
Right? Like if we're talking about a university is great. In universities, I always tell them there are two audiences that we would have to speak to when I was creating content. Is number one, that this is going to be a fun place for you to be. You're going to meet people. You're going to have the time of your life, to the student. And also number one, that this is a safe place to send your children.
Yes, the parents.
They will be able to, yes, exactly. And that is to the parents.
Right.
So when you have those, because those, like, that's how I know my audience, because the students are the ones that are showing up every day. And for some, the parents are the one paying, or the parents are the ones bringing them, or the parents are the ones visiting. So a lot of times it's looking, okay, who is our, but like who thinks we are their audience?
Right.
Who thinks they're in our audience? And then taking that and moving that forward and building from there.
Right. And it's only a few of the big super brands that can do that. And I'm thinking of Budweiser, right? The beer itself is pretty specific as to who's going to drink it. If you're a Coors fan, you're not drinking Bud. If you're a Guinness fan, you're not drinking Bud. If you're not a beer fan, you're not drinking, and so, but who doesn't like Clydesdales and puppies? Right.
Right.
And,
Right.
but it's so they can get away with that. But, but I do find it interesting because, I mean, they're still, I think they're, in several of the categories, they're probably one of the biggest beer sellers in the United States. And maybe that is why they can get away with it. If they were not that big, then they'd have to say, hey, drink our beer, drink our beer. And it's really funny because if the Clydesdales aren't in a Budweiser commercial, we're like, wait a minute, there's something wrong with this. And there really are, I live in Atlanta, and so the land of Coca-Cola, right? They have their whole polar bear thing. But the bears are always drinking Coke. I mean, that's the thing. But it's only if you're those super brands that you can get away from telling people, here is what we have, and you as the person who it appeals to should buy it.
And we're also seeing that those brands can get lazy and take missteps.
Right.
Like they sometimes are almost a victim of their success.
Right.
Because they can't stray away. Bud Light tried to reach a new audience.
Poor Bud Light. Yikes.
And got
an example.
hammered. Right. Yes, they got hammered with that. Pepsi tried to step into serious social justice issue conversations with a Kardashian, right? Kendall Jenner, and got hammered. Sometimes it's like, hey, you've already told us who you are for decades. We believe you. Therefore, you cannot just change that unless you find some intentional ways that the audience will accept you. But you can't just tell people, gone are the days where a brand can just tell you what they are and we believe them.
Right.
If you do that on TV, yeah, you can spend tens of millions of dollars on TV spots and get results. You can spend that same amount on social, people are going to be like, no, not.
Yeah. They click that little X and your ad no longer shows, right?
Yes, not interested, scrolling away, so you have to, the way you reach your audience has to be different, and it has to be through some type of appeal to what they want to see, regardless if it's relevant to your brand or not.
Right. And of course, on social, what you're looking for is that interaction. Clicking like, sharing, that's always great. Commenting, all of those things, even if it's negative. Now you don't want it to get too far negative, right? But sometimes that's how you can solve problems. The clients that I work with, we get a lot of clients that I work with are senior living communities. So care facilities. And so sometimes you can get some negative reviews. Now, these are a different type of care facility. So they're a little higher end and things like that, but you'll still get negative reviews. It's going to happen. And of course, everybody wants to hide their head. Oh, I don't know. And I'm like, no. We always respond to those negative reviews. And we're not responding to the person who wrote it, because 99% of the time I don't think I've ever had anybody who wrote the negative review come back and say anything, good or bad. But you're responding for everybody else who reads it. And so that's why we don't want to do it. But it is always an example. And we use it to say, the care of our residents is our utmost concern. Please always feel free to take your concerns to our executive director. All of that. So then when somebody reads it, they go, oh, they do care. Right. And so, but yeah, having those, and it's called social for a reason.
Yes.
We want those social interactions with people.
And it's funny, what the way that I describe it is when two people are arguing on Facebook, it's not a one-on-one private conversation. It's a gladiator match. And each person is performing for their fans that have shown up to watch them. The same thing in business. People are writing a review, not to you. They are writing a review to anybody else that's going to come to this place, which means you have to respond to anybody else that's
Right.
coming in to do that.
Right. Even if it's not right. We travel a lot. And so I like to read Yelp and TripAdvisor and things like that, right? To see. And I still remember, obviously, I still remember this. It was a hotel. And one of the reviews said, worst place I'd ever been in. When the people came out of the bar next door, it was so noisy we couldn't sleep. Okay, that's a very valid review. But the response was absolutely hilarious. Not to downplay your concern. However, we are completely surrounded by a park. So we think you might have accidentally selected the wrong place to write your review. So, they didn't say, hey, you're an idiot. They made it funny because then, and of course, then what happened was other people posted and said, greatest place we've ever been. Yes. But I thought that was just the funniest thing in the world because they could have, first of all, they could have ignored it and went, well, that's not us.
Yeah, right.
And, or they could have said, well, you dingbat, we're surrounded by parks. There's, the closest bar is a mile away or whatever, but they took a lighthearted approach to it. So I'm, the person who wrote it didn't respond. But I'm sure they were thinking, oh, oops.
Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm. And again, it's just taking the time to understand that your audience is going to appreciate that.
Right.
Like it's a way you're not getting defensive. You're not saying that, but you're saying that so that the other people are like, wait, is that? Oh, that's not even them. Oh, but nice. They responded. That's that customer service personified. Like of taking that into the digital world and still having that audience first, audience centric focus.
Right. Right. And it's amazing how, I can see a commercial for a brand over and over and over again. I pay no attention to it, right? I might think whatever. But if I see a review or a comment from somebody I have no idea who they are on social, I will believe it. And that's the thing that I think so many businesses forget is that those comments and posts and whatevers, we do believe that because it is a real person usually and not the paid ad that somebody is doing, which is why I like Google. And I do always have to talk to people about this. I say, it's great for the employees to go in and post reviews, but they need to identify and say, hey, we work here. Otherwise people are like, nah, and it's considered not a biased review. And you don't want those. And it's perfectly fine to say, hey, I love working here. I mean,
right. Yeah, absolutely. To have that ability to say, hey, like I've been working here for 3 years. I love it. Most of the people in here love that. That's absolutely okay. Right. But yeah, it's funny. We grew up with the moniker of don't talk to strangers. And now we base all of our decisions based off of them.
Right. And they're total strangers. And it is funny. I was having this discussion with somebody yesterday. We've all come to this conclusion that our monitor or, our screen is a shield. And so we can say whatever we want. And personally, I almost never respond to trolls. I'm like, okay, whatever. And it has to really be something that I think, gets to me before I will, because I don't know who they are and I don't care. Yeah, and if it's somebody I know, I'll contact them privately. But yeah, I mean, I had a guy one time who, we were just commenting about tattoos, right? You probably don't think that a woman like me has I have tattoos. I have ink, right? And so, and I responded in some comments. Somebody had said something about, hey, what do you think about tattoos? And I responded, and this person just, and I think all I said was, I have some. I mean, nothing major. And this person who I'd never met, no idea who they are, responded, oh, he was horrible. He was nasty. He was awful. And how could I deface my body like that? And I was like, okay, troll. And then I thought about it. And it was like, no. And I always want to think as in teaching moments, right? And so I went back to him and I responded and I said, well, let me tell you, my tattoo says warrior. not the basketball, the warrior, right? Because I've had people say that, is that for the basketball team? No.
No, for Steph Curry. No.
Right. And I said, and it says warrior, and it goes along with my 5 radiation tattoos. And you want to talk about defacing? I've had X number of surgeries for cancer. He apologized, and so, but we do have to watch, whether personally or for the business, how we respond, because there are times where it is better to not say anything, or to just say, thank you so much for your comments. We will take them, you take them to our next staff meeting or whatever it is. But sometimes if they've really gone down that rabbit hole, ignore it, because people reading it go, whoa.
Yes. People can still sense crazy on the internet. You can read it and be like, okay, and especially if you have enough 5, 4, sometimes even 3-star reviews, and there's one crazy one, it's usually like, that person was having a bad day.
Yeah, right? Really bad day. Right. But I think one of the other things that business people, and even, when we're doing this for our personal reasons, we struggle with what it is that we're going to post. And, when we talked about, knowing who our audience is and what we're writing for, but then we're like, oh my God, I have to write the perfect message. And now AI kind of makes this fun, but I think we all struggle with, it has to say the exact right thing. And, I love the fact that you talk about adding humor and things like that in there. So why is it that good is better than perfect?
Yeah, because perfect does not exist. So if you're waiting for perfect, then you are going to post nothing or close to nothing. Good gets you results. Perfect gets you inaction. Right? Like, we can pursue perfection, but we are not trying to achieve perfection. Those are two very different things. One of the beauty about the algorithm, and again, the reason I think why I say, like my generation and up, right? We grew up, anything that was visual, even auditory, anything that was visual or auditory was to a level of what we saw as perfection, right? The cartoons were professional. The radio shows were professional. CDs were professional. Really, the only professional show that showed things that were amateur were brought into all of our homes by Bob Saget with America's Funniest Home Videos,
and we just thought those were the funniest things.
Exactly, right? But it was still bucketed in this lights, camera, action. So when we create, we're like, oh, well, it has to be. No, it doesn't. It truly doesn't, because the algorithm works differently. With America's Funniest Home Videos, they buy a certain amount of reach that they are going to have based on their time slot, right? Because like, X amount of million people are going to be watching this channel. We want that channel. So that way, if it's bad, they're going to know it. On social, if you put something out that's bad, no one's going to see it. Because the algorithm's not going to take it to more people. That's then learnings for you. That's actually a good thing for you to be like, oh, okay, we put this out. It didn't work. Let's look at why, and then let's go from there. But there isn't any big embarrassment. There isn't anything. It's the analogy that we use is concert hall versus street performer. And a lot of times we want to see ourselves in a concert hall, right? Like, you come in, you're dressed for the occasion, you sit down, and like for the first 50 minutes, it's like kind of slow, but you're like getting into it. And then the last 50 minutes,
as it builds.
And then, the crescendo happens, and all of that, you're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I'm so glad I waited for that. Well, they had already had your attention. When it's social, we're street performers. That means that
you're walking past.
Exactly. Not only is somebody not there to see you, they're actually going to go do something else, which means that you have to stop them, make them watch you, and then keep them occupied,
right?
Yeah. So it's a different way of looking at things. So that's why you post good, right? Like if it's good enough, put it out there, see if it works. If it didn't work, it's like a kind of perfect. I don't know if you've ever been to like New York City, the people that are trying to get people to come to comedy nights or do whatever. It's the numbers game. It's not like, all right, this person's walking up. I got it. Oh no, I wasn't perfect. No, you say you get to know, you move on.
Right.
So it's the same thing with social when it comes to good content is better than perfect because good content gets you results and information on how to move forward and grow that.
Right. And I'll admit I am kind of grammar police, right? I know the difference between there, and there, and your, and all those. And so I make sure that, but you can go back and you can fix mistakes or you can delete it. I mean, and so there are those, but like there's a restaurant that I follow that is local that does not capitalize anything ever in their posts. And once I got used to that, I was like, okay. And I have no idea why. I don't know. It'd be interesting to actually go in and see, is their menu not use capital? I mean, all of those things. But that's become part of their brand. And so do I like it? I get a little twitchy when I read their posts, but I think there's your brand, there's being professional. There are those things. And of course you need it to be accurate. You don't want to, you certainly don't want to have incorrect information, things like that. Now, can you do it in a comedic way? Yes. But people have to understand, okay, when I said 1 million people did this, that was an exaggeration. But yeah, it's again, that comes back to who is your audience and where are you? I mean, if you're on LinkedIn, it had better be pretty well written, grammatically correct, things like that. If you're on Facebook, well, that's a little different. TikTok, Instagram, I mean, they all have their own styles. And so the people who are there are going to understand it differently and read it differently.
And that's one of the understanding. It all comes back to that understanding your audience.
Right.
And so one of the things I love the grammar, the punctuation of that restaurant reminded me of is it is more important to have a cult following than a large following.
Yes, because social. The cult following buys your stuff.
Yes, exactly. Water, like what you and I have been, if you all audio listeners, you can't see, Deb and I essentially just take turns drinking water. When the other person's talking, Deb's drinking, right? This is water, right? If you live in the United States, for the majority, most of us have this very easy to get. So that is an oversaturated market.
Right.
Liquid Death came along and said, we are still going to start a water brand anyway. And called it Liquid Death, which one is an amazingly aggressive name for water. It sounds like, is that like a new Four Loko flavor?
Right.
Is that a party game, right? So the intrigue is there. And there are people that are like, why would I ever drink something called Liquid Death?
Right.
And they will be like, you wouldn't, because we're not here for you.
You're not my people.
And they're okay with that, and I think that's one of the you work with C-suite. That's like an unfathomable thing for a C-suite or high-level executive sometimes think about. It's like, oh no, but we need to. No, you don't.
Right.
Because a cult follower is going to buy more than the 10 lukewarm followers that don't see the value in it. People buy Liquid Death because it makes them feel a certain way, because you have created that essence around them with your brand intentionality. Right. And like it starts with it. They try and some stuff they put out, I'm like, oh, that wasn't great. And then other stuff I'm like, okay, they're back. Like they're just trying stuff. Right. But their audience allows them to do that because they have focused on this niche cult audience that they know they want. Yep. These are people, and I would actually venture to say that the people that drink, there are more people that drink Liquid Death that aren't water drinkers. So they drink more water by drinking Liquid Death than there are for any other brand because of how it makes them feel.
Right. And I am definitely not their people. I've never even heard of that. And right, because I'm definitely not their target market in probably a lot of ways, not the least of which is age. But yeah, and the other way to think of a cult following is a passionate following, right? And those are the people who are they're going to be your brand ambassadors. You put a great piece of content out, they share it. And then it comes back to exactly what we were saying before. You share something about whatever it is because I like you. I'm going to go, oh, I need to try that out. And so then we get that lovely little thing that we call word of mouth. And that's where we want those. And I think that is where businesses struggle, because that comes back to the everybody is your market, right? But if you're sending out, and I'm going to do math easy here because math is one of those challenges. If 1,000 people look at your message and nobody shares it, then you wasted your time. If you had it targeted to 10 people and those 10 people are your passionate, your cult, your whatever the heck we want to call them, that's what you want. Because why waste your time on those 1,000 if they're not going to do anything?
Yeah. And those 10 people, if you get 1 to 2 to share, that is success.
Right.
Because that means that you're appealing to 20% of the people that you're talking with. Right. A lot of times we get obsessed with numbers and followers and growth, and are the people that are always there from day one, willing to continue to support you.
Right. When Twitter first came out, or X, or whatever the heck we call it today, numbers were the big thing. I mean, you went, and so people would buy followers. These were people who, they might not have even been people, right? But in many cases, it was, somebody who's sitting in another country who has 12 screen names or all these various things. And so you could buy followers, and then you'd say, I have 1 million followers. But 999,000, whatever that would be, we're never going to buy it. And so, and worse, then it screws up the algorithms, because if nobody is paying attention, then whatever the platform is says, why should we show it? And that is, it is that numbers game. We know that Facebook pages, the business pages, only about 5% of the people that are fans of your page even see it. So, how do you drive those numbers up? And so when somebody comes to you and says, Adam, we got to get bigger. We need more. We need more. Now, thank God, I don't think we buy followers anymore. I haven't seen that in a long time. And I would refuse to. When I would have clients say, hey, buy followers, I'm like, nope. If you want that, then you don't want me. But, when somebody is that concerned about the numbers, and it's usually one of those bean counter people, what do you tell them?
I asked them why. I asked them, okay, well, what is the reason you want it?
Okay.
If I have had answers say, this is an intentional vanity metric that when people go to our page, they see that we're followed by a lot, which would make cool. Okay. Like we kind of
especially if they're an influencer.
Right. Yeah. But then it's like, okay, well, then you're going to have an engagement problem. So, we'll figure. So there's all that. But yeah, that's like the best case scenario. It's somebody that knows and they're just trying to play the game. But if I ask them, I say, look, is followers what you want? Because we can get you followers. But then also, usually when I ask, okay, well, you want all your followers to mirror the audience you have now. And they'll usually say, well, no, because we want to. I'm like, okay, well,
we want to expand our market.
Right. Yeah. So if you want to expand your market, that means we have to go into newer markets, which means that we may not be able to always focus on the same information that's been working now. So that means that actually we may have to have some of those metrics go down so that we can build with intentionality in those other markets. So, like having those types of conversations of, hey, I know you say you want to grow, but you're looking at, that would be like the CEO telling you, hey, I want to grow. You would be like, Okay, grow where, grow
Yeah.
how, what
Mm-hmm.
markets, do we have
Mm-hmm.
research? It's the same thing
Mm-hmm.
there. You're
Mm-hmm.
looking at one number that says 50,000. You're like,
Mm-hmm.
I want that to get to 100.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so you want those 50,000 people to be made up of who?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like, let's
Mm-hmm.
start putting, like, let's
Mm-hmm.
personify the numbers. I think
Yes.
that's
Mm-hmm.
really, that's
Right.
a
Mm-hmm.
very long
Mm-hmm.
way of me saying,
Mm-hmm.
let's personify the growth.
Mm-hmm.
You want to grow. How do you want to grow?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we want to get 18 to 25-year-olds. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
you're 50 to 65 now. So that
Right.
means that we are going to
Mm-hmm.
have to do a departure of the
Yeah.
content that we've been
Mm-hmm.
creating, which also may alienate some of
Mm-hmm.
the current brand
Right.
in
Yeah,
order to
because I'm
bring that
gonna,
brand.
I'm in that market. I'm gonna go, well, I'm lost. Why are they now changing? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. Why are they saying Riz? What is happening?
Mm-hmm.
Like there's
Mm-hmm.
all this that can happen.
Mm-hmm.
So then the question is, all right, if you had to choose between the two,
Mm-hmm.
which one would you want to focus on?
Right.
Well, we want to focus on the 18 to 25.
Okay.
Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
that means that we can be okay with lose. So it's not that
Mm-hmm.
you actually want to grow in the number.
Right. It's
You
gonna
want to grow
balance
in the
or
new market. Yeah, right. So like it may balance. And then I can say, okay, so then what we will do
mm-hmm.
is look at the age demographics
Mm-hmm.
of our audience over the next
Mm-hmm.
12 months.
Right.
Right. Or every quarter we'll look
Mm-hmm.
and say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, we only grew by 500 followers,
Mm-hmm.
but the shift
Mm-hmm.
we had 6% 18 to 25.
Right.
Now we have
Right.
9%.
So that was
Right. So, like,
good. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
exactly. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's growth. So,
Mm-hmm.
finding out really what they want, like
Mm-hmm.
personifying those numbers, I think is
Mm-hmm.
really going to be
Mm-hmm.
how we move that forward as
Mm-hmm.
we have those conversations
Right.
with someone who's
Mm-hmm.
just saying grow.
Mm-hmm. Right. And you can have, in some cases, a product that can appeal to more,
Mm-hmm.
to bigger demographics, but you do, in many cases, in most cases, need different messaging. Somebody's, I might buy something that an 18-year-old would buy, but it's going to have to have been a different message to get my attention.
Yes.
Yes. And so I think that's the thing. And so then you get costs, then you get your marketing people that are involved, then you get your, all of those things. Then they're like, oh, maybe we'll just market harder to that one demographic. Right. And so, and all businesses want to grow, right? They have to, but it's all about doing it strategically.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. And having the same strategy. The other problem is we all started on social media around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So we all saw the gold rush
right
to race up to the top
mm-hmm.
and become this top level influencer. So we all think that that's just like attainable and happening. Right. And it happens with every new thing. We're currently seeing it with crypto, right? Like it happened there. People trying to buy the wave and ride that up and do all of that. Well, now we're seeing it with AI, right? Like everyone wants to find that lightning in the bottle, meteoric rise to the top. Like in VC and P, it's the unicorn, right? Like what do we find? But having the strategic intentionality of an evergreen strategy that's like, hey, if we don't get genie in the bottle, how do we still continue to move up and grow?
Right. And genie in the bottle does not happen often. It's very unusual when you have something that is so unique. You may not remember when there were pet rocks. And I mean, people sold rocks and they, and it was like this huge thing that made, and things like that. And, or like maybe a toy, every once in a while, something will hit. But the sad truth of the matter is there's really no unique products anymore. And I mean, you might find something like a pet rock. I mean, that really was just, you'll have to research it because it made millions. And I remember thinking, we're buying rocks. These are rocks. Right. It's like, but yeah, so it's, how do you develop your message so that your offering of that product is unique? Maybe it's your customer service, maybe it's whatever it is. And I think that is where many businesses stumble, is because they were like, Pepsi did really well, so Coke's going to do the same thing. No, those are two very different type of things. But people always want to copy their competitors who are successful.
Yep. And it's funny, we talk about Coke and Pepsi. That's the other thing. Business envy is going to be around forever. When Pepsi came on and they started going up, Coke put out new Coke. Like they were like, oh, well, we'll do this. There's clearly an audience. Yeah, but it's not your audience.
Right.
Going back to the
because
very
people
beginning,
went, ew, new Coke is icky.
Yeah, they're like,
and
no,
because
that's not
it
what
tasted like Pepsi.
Yes. And that's not what they wanted.
Right.
And that goes back to the beginning. What does who thinks they are your audience and what do they want from you?
Right.
Like with those drinkers, they wanted that Coke taste and there was just a new market for that differentiation. The biggest thing now is, what the iPhone did, and I put the invention of the iPhone at the same level as like the wheel or the combustion engine or that because of how it facilitated the next level of growth. Everything changed from hardware to software as far as innovation, right? Like, so you don't have pet rocks anymore, but I'm sure you can download an app that you have a pet rock, I'm sure that there are things like that. So, and with software, it can be even not only similar to others, but other people can copy you easier.
Right.
So you do have to have that brand messaging. You do have to have that strong brand strategy because people are buying into what and who they like. You can rag on influencers all you want and talk about this, talk about that. People listen to them because they like them more than you.
Right.
Like, and if that's the case, then you have to figure out, okay, well, that's what they're doing to them. That's what I need to do with my brand in order to get people to also buy into the product that I have.
Right. Yeah. And you may or may not be successful. One of my favorite commercials that is on right now is for Skinny Pop popcorn, right? I've never had it, but Jennifer Aniston is selling it. And so she's the commercial, for those who haven't seen it, she's walking into a hotel with her bag of Skinny Pop and she goes to check in. And the lady behind the desk says, oh my gosh, I love this. And of course, Jennifer Aniston, is, and then she realizes they're not talking about, and not only are they not talking about her, they don't know who she is. And I love, and of course, that's one of the things that if you are banking, on having an influencer sell your product, sometimes they are like, a card of what?
Yes.
Yes. And so, but yeah. Well, oh my gosh, Adam, this has been so much fun. We've kind of covered all sorts of different topics. But it really has been such a great discussion that I think is going to make people think. So for those who are now going, okay, I get it, but I don't know how to do it. How do they reach you and what are the services that they provide?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do run on the founder and CEO of Ace Creative. So we are a creative agency and production company. We create content on behalf of brands. That is what we do. Audience first, audience centric, all those buzzwords. Not only do we say them, we also do them. You can find me on Instagram the easiest at They Call Me AC. So spell it They Call Me AC. On LinkedIn, I'm Adam Constantine. Our business is at hashtag the word hashtag. So hashtag Ace Creative. So HASHTAG, Ace Creative, spell all that out. And then Ace Creatives on LinkedIn as well. But yeah, like I love talking about this. We love creating good work for lots of different clients. But yeah, no, and Deb, thank you so much for having me on. This has been so fun. I literally was, it's an hour already.
I know. I looked down and went, oh crud. And it's funny because I tell people that's why I set a timer. But yeah, I mean, this really has been so much fun. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
I really love the focus on good is better than perfect. Understanding that social media is such a journey. There's so much content out there. The more content you can put out there to get information on what your audience likes is the best. Don't worry about bombing on content. The good thing, I've bombed so many times on social and you'll never know because you're never going to see it. So good is better than perfect. And if I can tag on to that, The algorithm is actually your friend. The reason why the algorithm exists is to keep the audiences that they have, which you want, on platforms longer. So when when the algorithm changes, instead of getting upset about that, think about why the algorithm would have changed and then make those same changes in your strategy if it applies to what you're doing.
Oh my gosh, such great advice. I really have been having such a fun time talking with Adam Constantine of Ace Creatives. I'm Deb Creer, and until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.